this is probably going to be more of an interactive session, to be honest, and we don't want to make this like us presenting stuff to you guys. We want it to be like, hey, what do you guys think, and have a dialogue with the partners. So just to get a sense of the room, who here is a customer looking to like maybe talk to some partners about building an integration? Or is everyone here a technology provider and wanting to figure out how to get their solution into our product? Yeah? Okay. Okay, no, that's great, because I just want to get a sense for if there's customers in the room, you know, we might be able to ask them like, hey, how would they like to consume the stuff you guys are going to build into the platform? All right, so what I wanted to give you, first start off with is, this is how we're telling our narrative of identity to our customers, right? So you guys get a sense of like, what are we telling our customers about identity, and then how does your solution or offering fit into that narrative, right? So it's really important for you guys to hear that pitch, so you guys know how we're talking about it, how we're positioning it, and why our customers may want some of the things you guys are building, right? So what we're trying to tell our customers is like, hey, stop and think about it for a second. You know, when you sign agreements today, you know, you can't just sign and be approved for a home loan. You need to show your ID. And actually for the important agreements in life, you're going to be asked, can I see your ID, right? But we all know, and you guys all know this really well, it's not as simple as just, can I see your ID? There's all these verification steps that happen before you sign a DocuSign agreement, right? And even in the paper world, there's a lot of stuff that happens before you sign that eventual contract. And you know, making that digital transformation is not enough if all you do is you digitize the last piece of paper. But all of the steps that led you to that contract are still manual or still on paper. So you can imagine like different types of transactions will require maybe sometimes for you to come in person and meet someone face to face. Almost all cases you'll need to check a person's ID and photocopy it. Sometimes you may ask to see a utility bill or something to prove that this is where you actually live. You may be asked to fill out another piece of paper so that you could perform a credit check. And then in almost all cases, some government list is being checked to make sure you don't show up on any of these politically influenced lists, or to comply with things like OFAC, right? So all of this is required. You, Mr. Customer, are doing this today outside of DocuSign. And it's not a great consumer experience, because they're having to, your customer is having to do a bunch of stuff, and then great, the last thing is this iPad with the contract, but like everything up until then is still manual. And you're not getting the full benefits of the digital transaction, because half of the evidence and half of the data is still on paper, right? And so our goal as DocuSign is trying to digitize that whole process. We're not looking at it as, here's SMS, here's phone, here's ID verification, make it more secure, reduce risk, blah. It is, we want to help you digitize your consumer experience. That will help drive actually more value to your customers, accelerate your transactions, reduce drop-off, increase pull-through rate, all that stuff. So it's much more about improving your business. And probably the risk and fraud stuff is always there, but it's the undertone of our narrative with our customer, right? So we want to fully digitize the consumer experience. And so what we actually built is this platform called DocuSign Identify. So when you're looking at the new product that we announced, this was probably not very evident, but what we've done is we've actually made it possible now for anyone to integrate an ID solution into the DocuSign Agreement Cloud. So the ID verification product is using all the new rails that we've just laid down. So it's using all the new integration points, and we've built the first application on this platform using the new system. So imagine it's like inside of the signing engine, we don't need to go and customize our signature workflow to insert the next implementation or insert the next verification technology. We've exposed the standard webhook so anyone can build their solution on top. And so we will continue to build out our platform and portfolio of DocuSign offerings. And so right now it's like SMS, phone, KBA. Now we can scan a driver's license or passports. But we know we're not going to be able to hit all the different verticals and all the different geos that our customers are going to need. And so this is actually going to enable us with this platform to arrive at a solution for our customers in multiple ways, right? So we have a bunch of customers who may have like something like a customer portal or some kind of authentication service that they want to plug into DocuSign. That now makes it possible. They just need to build an ID provider that supports our protocol. This is going to allow us at DocuSign to build new ID products even faster and accelerate those products to market. You know, for a long time, all we had was SMS, phone, and KBA, you know, for years, right? And it's because it took pretty substantial engineering for us to build another one. And so ID verification was the first proof that we could build these things pretty rapidly, and we have plans to build more, you know, more features into the platform. And then the third part is where it gets interesting for the partner ecosystem and you guys, is that now anyone can build an integration into our platform to offer your ID technology or solutions to our customers. So imagine, you know, we have hundreds of millions of agreements that we send every year from our customers, and those hundreds of millions of transactions could be things that, you know, that could be using your ID services. And so when you think about, you guys know this very well, and this is what we've been telling our customers, IDs happen everywhere. Don't think of this as just like a FinServ thing, but even in employee onboarding, right, you'll need to check a person's ID, you'll do a background check, and you might check for the right to work. ID verification is where we started because that one was the most common. That's usually the thing you do first is photocopy someone's ID. And so as you can see, there's a ton of stuff that we just don't have and across all those different use cases, and that's just, you know, a few of them to illustrate. But here's what we see as a good you know, symbiotic relationship with the ecosystem. So what does what does our partner ecosystem have, and what does DocuSign have, and how can we make a good relationship or a good partnership for both our mutual customers, right? So we know there's a ton of ID partners out there that have ID technology, and they're constantly you know, looking for utilization of their technology. And the way that they do that is they go find transactions. They go find e-commerce sites, they go find banks, they go find FinServ customers to put their technology into their business process, right? And that usually requires you convincing your customers to go integrate your solution within their specific business process or workflow. And obviously there's a ton of cool stuff. You know, you go into different countries and different verticals, there's all sorts of specializations and things that we're not experts at, but there's a ton of people in the ecosystem that are experts at that. For what DocuSign can provide is, you know, we have hundreds of millions of agreements every year, and our customers are screaming for what you just have phone, SMS, KBA, but I need OFAC, I need this, and I need KYC, and I need AML, and I need background checks, and I need to check this, and I need to check that. I need fraud score, I need that. And so we have a ton of customers that are just thirsty for more verification and applying it to their agreements. And we are one of the largest transaction streams in the world for these digital agreements. You know, actually this number is now higher, but you know, last year we had around 400,000 paying customers. Now it's at about 500,000 paying customers. And we send hundreds of millions of agreements every year. And a majority of them have very little authentication or verification, right? So it provides a huge opportunity to the ecosystem to build an integration and attach to our transaction stream so that, you know, our sales team could see that, you know, there's background check, I'm selling into an HR use case, I'm going to sell the DocuSign envelope, but sell background check or HR onboarding as a solution and add that up to the customer's account so they could start using your technology alongside DocuSign. And as you know, we work with a lot of the biggest brands in the world, and we know how hard it is to get integrated into their business process. But because we've been, you know, working with Salesforce, working with SAP and SuccessFactors, we're already embedded with a lot of their business process, and it took us a long time to get there. But that just means that they don't have to do a bunch of re-engineering to get your product into their transaction flow. If they're already sending DocuSign agreements, these would be the customers that you could go reach, right? So how does this framework work, just from a very high-level perspective? So imagine within our signing workflow, we have the ability to kick out through a webhook. It's actually a protocol, an OAuth extension based off of OAuth that we've added onto. And we also support SAML as another protocol. But imagine you hosted your own ID service or ID app, let's say. We redirect to your system. Your system provides all the screens and the workflow of what you want that end user to do. And whatever you put into your system and whatever business logic you want to run, if you want to do a credit check, that's fine. If you want to check someone's astrology symbol, that's fine too. Whatever it is that is your bread and butter, you put into that solution. And when you're done, you basically send them back to DocuSign with the signed piece of evidence and say, hey, I'm solution X, and these are the things I verified, and here's a signed piece of evidence that we can take and include as part of the transactional evidence. And that's basically how it works. What we want to do one day, and this is something we're working on and we'll be rolling out in a quarter, is we're going to start to build ID evidence as well. So anything that happens within the ID workflow can write data back into the evidence file for an individual user. So our ID verification app will actually start doing this, which will be writing, hey, this is the picture of the ID we took. Here's the information. It was a passport issued by a US passport. Here's some information if you want to if our customers want to opt into storing things like the expiration date, the date of birth, your address, et cetera, they can configure what information they want to retain as part of this process. And then eventually this will be one file that contains everything about that specific recipient. So if they went through and they did an ID verification, that information would be here. And then if they went to your system and did a credit check, you would add the credit score here, right? And then if they went to another system, so you could calculate a risk score or a fraud score, that would keep appending to this file. So our customers at the end of a transaction would be able to pull down the signed agreement, the transaction history, which is the COC and the envelope history, and then the signed evidence for that individual, right? That's like, here's all the things we found out about Darren when he completed this transaction. So this is where we'll kick into more of an, this is where the slides end and dialogues start. What we wanted to really just focus on is we have this technology, right? The Signio team, a few weeks ago, yeah, they're sitting back there. Kyle was here too.
Yeah, he ran over to Ryan real quick and he's coming back.
Okay, so, but the Signio team, and we've been working with Secure. We published the documentation, and the Signio team actually built a proof of concept, showing their biometric signature. And so what I showed you is not smoke and mirrors. The API and the platform is there as an MVP. And the things that we love to discuss is okay, what would you guys like to build on this platform? How would we go to market if you build an offering? How would you like us to sell it and position it to our customers, and what would that sales motion look like? And so this is definitely something, from the product perspective, us being on the product and engineering team, working with BD, our biz dev team, which is Darren Bibby back there, and also Ryan Cox, we would come up, we need to figure out, on one hand, there's some technology problems we need to go solve, there may be a missing feature for your integration that we need to go build. And then on the other hand, there's a commercial program we need to come up with together. How does it make sense for us to commercialize your particular offering? How do we go to market with it, with your sellers and our sellers? And how would we sell it, and how would we provision it if a customer buys it, right?
How do you envision on the last slide that customer's file? You've got, say, 5, 6, 7, 8 different providers sending you guys scores, sending you reason codes that effectively mean nothing unless you are the company that's providing it, right? How is it going to reside in this file, right? If Secure sends you a .97 and company X sends you a 1042, what does that mean, right? How are you going to boil that down?
Yeah, you envision a dashboard of sorts. If you're the enterprise customer and you're pulling in all of these reason codes, somebody's signed, but then you get back this score that says you have to first normalize all these scores and then say pass, fail, manual review.
Yeah, so what our customers do today with, like you've seen with the DocuSign Agreement Cloud and all the jazz about that, the automating your business process, our customers today take the finished agreements and they pipe it into like whatever downstream process, to fulfill on their obligations of the contract, right? And so with that, they've built a lot of stuff from a connect listener, so they get basically a callback when an envelope is completed. They call the APIs to get the envelope data and also some of the history. So we imagine this to kind of fit into that. So they may build additional infrastructure to pull the ID data out and make their own determination of what to do with that data. And so then they could take your risk score or fraud score and make a determination, hey, do we, send this to our security and safety team to do a further review before we actually kick into our fulfillment workflow and actually like transfer the money. Like it allows them to actually get this data programmatically so they can make workflow decisions, which they have workflow today, they just don't have this data in the stream of the transaction.
Yeah, that makes sense. I was just thinking, what's a pass to Verizon might not be a pass to Stripe.
Right,
might not be a pass
right,
to Cox, and so on.
right.
There is some portion of it. So hi, I'm Ryan, I'm the engineering lead for the platform, but there's some other validation stuff that we're doing on the platform, like in ID verification or the document verification. We have to compare a name to decide if it's a pass-fail to let them through. So for certain types of integrations where it is a pass-fail or it's a score, we can implement validators that can either numerically decide that you have to exceed this particular value in order for you to proceed in the customer workflow. And so those are all things that are possible in addition to all the things that Darren
Yeah.
mentioned. Got it.
And not everything in the platform needs to be check, right? So we have a way of configuring, like, does your solutions pass an authentication, bar or something? And it might not need to be. So we have customers implementing their own solution just so that they check, your location when you're signing a document. So they don't want that to be like if you're in US, you pass authentication. They still want the envelope to be marked as unauthenticated, because then other things will kick in like KBA or SMS, but they just want to do this like underneath the cover location check, and if you're in the right location or in the wrong location, they'll flag it and like stop you from signing, and that's all they're doing.
Yeah, I think from a sales enablement or sales perspective, it becomes a conversation too of friction management, right? What can you accomplish in a passive manner versus what triggers the friction that comes downstream? Because ideally, the more passive intelligence you can provide, the better.
Mm-hmm.
Is some of that coming from the, would that some of that be done on the platform, the identification platform though? Could that be configured to take some of that decision making?
So I was
in that
envisioning,
process?
I was envisioning someone, these customers are passing you information, which is then passed to the downstream providers. Those providers are doing something with it and giving you intelligence back. That intelligence will then trigger a series of business treatments that could include friction, but may not, depending on on their disposition, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, totally. Oh, there's Ryan.
What's up?
Miss Doubtfire's here.
Oh, you already started?
Yeah, here, you can have this mic.
Alright, cool.
So we just started this discussion, which was, we have technology, we don't have a commercial program, but that's what we're here to talk about.
Yep.
Feedback on what cool stuff could we build together. Feedback on what a good commercial program would look like with all the things on, the slide you have.
So hey gang, sorry for being late. I was double booked. My name is Ryan Cox. I work in DocuSign's BD team, work with Darren and team literally every day to try to drive trust-related capabilities into the platform with an emphasis on signer identity, which we've talked about. So one of the things we've learned, we've actually been integrating with identity systems for probably 8 or 9 years. And part of that has always been a form of commercial motion. And the very simple commercial motion is we sell a lot of transactions. I think we just crossed a billion lifetime to date. Those transactions, when they enter a regulated industry, when they enter a regulated scenario like anti-money laundering or know your customer, often when they enter just another country that has a signing and identity preference, we need to be able to bolster the trust of our envelopes. And so what we do from a commercial perspective, it's very simple. We work with vendors who have transaction-specific trust capabilities. Could be verifying an email, could be checking the veracity of a mobile phone, it could be linking to a digital certificate, it could be scanning a passport. And what we offer is sort of an endless sea and a growing sea of monetizable transactions for those partners. And it works reasonably well, but what we're learning as we get more and more into the space and as it moves away from, I'd say, sort of fringe transactions, meaning we have 5 people who know how to talk about hiring a temporary worker under German law. We have 1,000 sellers that we want to push this stuff because then everybody wins, including economically, they win. And so one of the lessons we've learned is when you're an embedded transaction and you sit maybe inside of a pool of vendors who are inside that embedded transaction, what's the right way to go to market, right? So what does branding matter or not? We have the economics and the resale margin stuff relatively under control. You give us a cost and we mark it up and make a couple cents along the way. But we've really learned, and I think, Darren, Brian chime in, there's a lot more to it than that because a lot of the services you offer are deep. A lot of the services you offer are nuanced or geo tweaked. And so we have sellers that kind of can get through the, hey, you probably care about the identity of your signer. I've got a whole dim sum menu of ways that we can handle that problem. But when you start to get into, can I customize my configuration? I have a support issue. Someone socially engineered a KBA flow. We fall down because we don't have that expertise. We don't have those at-bats. And so what we wanted to talk about today in a pretty transparent manner is if you're doing these kind of transactional resale motions with other vendors, not just DocuSign, which you probably are, what works? Is it, do you show up at QBRs and train salespeople? Do you do videos? Do you build intelligence into your app to teach people how to not fail out of a transaction? Can we all agree on a way to log things so that we know who's responsible when something fails? So it's by design, a very open-ended transaction, but as we move from, like I said, a handful of sellers in FinServe who sell KBA to people who are now selling Nordic bank IDs and EID schemas and passport scanning and email veracity, that's a lot to put on our sellers. That's not what they do. And so whether it's marketing campaigns, education campaigns, better support structure, whatever, we're open to learning how to do this better because the ultimate win you will get from us is having someone carry your product into the market and not bug you about it, and then we just send you checks, to be blunt. I mean, that's usually when most people are at their happiest. So we're, I don't know if you've been doing sort of back and forth, but that's we'd love to hear your opinion on what works and what doesn't work because we don't think we've mastered it yet.
Do you envision like a menu, so to speak, of providers and then the end customer would select, or is it more of a prepackaged offering that you're going to go to market with a couple different flavors?
Good question.
You have preferred providers or gold providers. How do you envision that working?
I mean, I think it's going to be a mix. I think there'll be here we have this checker like background check or credit check or whatever, and the customer's like, oh, I need an ID and I need to do a background check, so I'm going to buy these things a la carte and add it to my account and turn this workflow, like stitch together my own workflow. But what we heard this morning from our FinServe customers, they want more tailored solutions, so they're just like, just tell me what ID, like what solution or auth solution that the industry is using for loan applications, and I'll just go do that, right? And so there could be offerings in our ecosystem that's like, we do, bank onboarding, and we'll do all the 5 things you need to check for, to do that legally and compliant, right? So we do get, and even this is some of our big customers saying that, not the credit union, like small credit unions. Some of the bigger customers are like, we don't want to have to think about, is it an ID check and a credit check and this? It's like if there was a solution that kind of bundled all those together, and it was a thing that everyone around this table, like all of our peers were using, we would just use that and not like try to a la carte it ourselves. So I think we'll end up seeing both, but definitely the thing that our customers and probably our salespeople will like more is like, this is a solution for these sets of use cases. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, and I think that's going to work the best, in all honesty.
Well, if you look at some of the bit parts that we have, so when you're in the application, there is basically a menu at some point, either through the UX or the APIs, where as a sender, you'll need to have some intelligence to say, I want the thing. Well, to Darren's point, what gets interesting is sometimes people say, hey, it's cool that you scan passports, but I also need credit check. you don't have that, but I do. Can I wire that together through your app? Is that okay? And I think really you nailed it from a selling perspective. What we've done, which is probably a little bit our fault, I think we've marketed a lot of what we have and how it works, and we've left a little bit of the why it matters off to the side. So if you look at money movement online, most people probably don't care if it's an electronic or a digital signature or like how you prove Darren's identity. They want us to say it's compliant with the EU directive for AML. And so a different way to bundle this thing would be, don't worry about the bit parts you're buying or where they come from. You're buying a result. Yeah. And so we see a lot of tension in our own portfolio now, which is, I want an advanced electronic signature or a qualified electronic signature. There's ID and technology along the way, but it's a pretty clear understanding that they know what the end state is, and we kind of market and deliver the end state. With all this new firepower, we're trying to reimagine, like, do we go to market with this is EU AML compliant, this is Mexican certified certificate compliant, that kind of stuff. And so we're experimenting because it's it's an educational problem, not only for our sellers and buyers, but we also do a lot of business through channels. And so imagine it's not a DocuSign direct employee who sort of hears this stuff all the time, but it's an Ingram Micro salesperson who's working in Singapore and their customer needs. So we need to make this sort of really resonant, really local, easy to consume, and obviously economically viable for all partners. So I think the bundling thing is a good comment.
Swim lanes, right?
Yep.
In terms of which providers are going in. And you may have per country, but then you may have duplication, of course, throughout those lanes because providers do different things.
I think the dev team did a really good job starting that path because the entry point in the transaction now is country. And so basically the logic is, tell me the country's identity problem you're trying to solve, or you're a citizen of country X. These are the N number of ID motions we have for that country. So we're starting a baby step into kind of an intelligence or a wizard-based approach. But we have to work on that. So again, ideas welcome. I think bundling is kind of a no-brainer at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, my question to Darren earlier was about how do you take responses from this wide swath of vendors that are out there and boil them down into something that is meaningful and digestible for each of the end customers without drumming up too many questions and confusing folks, right? Just something to think about as well.
I think they're part and parcel, but yeah, that also gets back to the, where do you draw the line between DocuSign can handle it versus you need an expert. I think we've been lucky, especially given the number of KBAs we've executed over the years. What we did is we went to market with a pre-configured KBA setup, and it's like, if you buy it through us and you use it through our app, this is the question set, this is the logic. You don't get to configure it custom when you buy it and use it through DocuSign. But inevitably, two things happen. Somebody either has it or has their eye on a config, and then we sort of have to decide if we want to honor that or not, because it's dev work and config work. The other is when you have a for real problem. BW, you might remember, someone moved money online and they were in collusion with their friend and they socially engineered the data in the KBA. And then when people come back to us and they're like, okay, I need to know in the deepest of weeds what happens. I need evidence. I need a lawyer. And we just run back to the partner and say, hey, I'd like to invite you to a particularly nasty phone call if you're free, Thursday at 2. And so trying to figure out where we draw those lines, what claims we make around trust and responsibility. It's not brand new to us, but we're just trying to get better, which is why we wanted you guys to come here and share some thoughts.
Yeah.
Does anybody have assuming most people here are transactional trust-centric partners-ish, are you using a high-scale system akin to DocuSign, like Airbnb, Verified, or something like that? Are you inside of another app you're finding good success with? Because we would obviously like to hear that as a best practice, marketing, support, etc. Don't have to share the name, but we'd like to know the pattern.
Or is this like a new concept?
I don't think it's a new.
No, it shouldn't
Okay.
be. Yeah.
At all. I don't know that we fit. We're with Secure. I don't know that we fit as cleanly into what you said.
Sure.
We're providing intelligence back, and then the question becomes that intelligence solves a variety of different problems. Do those
Gotcha. Maybe an inverse of the question, have you heard anything, if you're an existing DocuSign partner or a potential partner, have we done anything, Safe Haven, have we done anything so far where you went home and said, those guys, like, why would they do that? Darren doesn't listen, for example. That's good. That's appropriate silence.
Or another thing is for your customer use cases, like what kind of extensibility points would you want to see in the platform, either in the processing of the transaction before the recipient can access it, or downstream, like if this score was above something, then what should happen in that context? Like what are your
Well, I think ultimately you boil things down to, well, we tend to boil things down to, you're either passing, you're failing, or you're going into some queue.
Right.
Right? The idea is to pass as many people as you can without letting the bad people through the door and then shrinking the queue. So if you can tailor your responses to basically a pass, fail, or an accept, reject, review.
and then where's the queue in that case? Is that Salesforce generally? Is it
Where is the queue managed? The queue would be managed.
By like a compliance person or an operations person.
Yeah.
Like it's the person.
Yeah.
But are these let me rephrase, are they in-house like systems? Like, is us making sure that we get the right notification of needs in like a real person review into somewhere into
That's part of my
Okay.
question is DocuSign then the one passing the end result, or are you leaving that to the customer? And if it's DocuSign, are you giving them a menu of conservative, moderate, aggressive? Because you obviously, you got to keep it finite,
Yep.
otherwise you guys have too many customers, it's going to explode, right?
Yeah, I mean, course correct me if I missed something. Right now they're pretty terminal transactions, right? So it's single envelope, single signer. We get a signal back from you. Pretty binary. I mean, we might look at the payload and the nuance within the signal, but it's mostly pass fail. And if you pass, you keep going. If you fail, there's some message, and it kind of ends abruptly. I'm highly confident that we won't build Jumio, for example, has a hybrid offering where they'll then like redirect that in real time to a team of humans waiting to resolve a conflict. We don't have any plans to build like a giant pool of agents who wait around during transaction and resolve things. But I think your point's a good one, which is, what are you going to tell the bank when it fails? Do you give them back a signal and say, call this person and good luck, or do we play some role in that? Right now, it's pretty much kind of one and done. But as we start to persist attributes over time, get a better idea of Darren through multiple signals, right, in a sort of an abstracted way. I mean, maybe we can say, hey, this signal was sort of soft, but I've got 4 other really good ones for this user in my system. I'm going to let that go and inform the bank why I let that go. But we're not that advanced yet. I mean, we think about it, but we're not.
But that being said, I mean, we're working on workflow.
Yep.
We already have the DocuSign Connect platform, which basically can push the transactions upon completion into downstream systems. There's Connect listeners in Salesforce as an example. So if Salesforce becomes the place that collects all this, then you can start to build, or perhaps we can build as part of our DocuSign for Salesforce platform, ways to start to now filter these out.
Yeah.
User review, go to fulfillment, take action on this transaction as it's gone through the system. And so if we distill the language, if you will, down to some canonicalized set of describing things, then those things become fairly easy for a customer to configure. I'm willing to say, if I hit an 80 or higher risk score, you're good. If I'm below 80, put it into a queue for people to process.
Because you're going to run into some customers that they're not just going to want a KYC solution. They're going to want KYC.
Sure.
They're going to want fraud. They're going to want some biometrics.
Yep.
So you're going to have multiple accept, reject reviews coming in. You got to be able to render one ultimate decision, right?
Yep. Yeah, we're already seeing that.
Yeah. I mean, ultimately, I don't think we would be giving the data to a lot of our customers to make a decision with all the signals. Because we would. I mean, that actually most of them would want that and not have DocuSign kind of make a decision for them. They care about who is. They care about who's giving the signals. They do care about that because we've had some customers that said, I don't like this provider of KPI. I would rather you use this other one because I trust. So they care about where the.
Certain providers through your platform,
Yep.
and pull that from other platforms through their
Sure, yeah.
You can test that.
The platform already has to, in order for it to interop with a variety of different vendors, has to already canonicalize or standardize the language in which we speak. So for example, when DocuSign initiates a request to your service, we have to say, we're requesting this type of service, here's the configuration for it. And then you have to send that back to us in some language that we understand so we can make any of those decisions on it. And so we can introduce new types of ways for you to describe the result of your process. And then we can flow those downstream to whatever decision-making system needs to actually process it. But like that's already a thing that has to happen in order for you to be able to integrate. So that kind of standardization in the language, if we work together on it, it becomes easier for the downstream systems to process, because if you're playing in two systems that give a similar response type, even if they're doing very different things, it becomes easier for you to figure out, do I go left or do I go right, as opposed to up or down or something like that.
Yeah, I think that makes sense.
Yeah, and there's some. I mean, I like the Connect Salesforce. That's a good pathway to resolve that. So one of the things we've discussed in let's say a fail condition, right? You don't, whatever combination of things Jane Doe needed to provide us, it wasn't sufficient for being compliant with anti-money laundering, for example, opening a bank account. So if we send a signal back to the bank, I mean, we might end up with a UX that says, "Hey, your transaction's still under review. Please keep your phone around because within 60 seconds you'll get a call from an agent who will help you finish that." We would redirect, payload abstraction, our opinion back to maybe a work queue in Salesforce, and then we could hold that envelope open, wait for them to say, "Hey, I had a phone call. It turned out he fat fingered something." Let it through, and then off we go. But that's sort of in the brain and in the lab, not in production. And candidly, I don't think many of our customers have pushed us much on that yet. They're still, I think not to be mean, they're still coming to grips with just trusting digital trust and trusting us as a brand that delivers digital trust. And they're coming to grips with the evidence that we offer and the vendors we use. So we've seen people buy 1 million KBAs, use them, we never hear from them. I was on the phone 5 years ago with someone that said, "I want to talk to your fax vendor directly and understand how they secure my email to fax gateway." And we were like, didn't see that coming, but sure, we'll put them on the phone. But I mean, it was nasty, right? I mean,
And that's the other thing, that you will have
a lot of work.
banks that will require your vendors to be third-party risk managed, SOC 2, ISO 27301, all of that stuff.
Yep.
So that'll have to be part of your program too.
Yeah, well, the agreement cloud's already hit that, right? So the fact that it's not everything is our eSig package, like our availability claims, all of our stuff. I mean, we've got to apply that to Spring CM and Seal and IntelliDocs, and ultimately some of these transactional plugins. So it'll be interesting I don't think there's a day where everyone plays at the same level, but when you buy, you should be very aware of this thing is maybe a little less, amazing than this thing. And as long as we're transparent about it, we don't make any claims otherwise, I'm okay with that. But you're right, it's a big deal.
We also wouldn't make claims that everything in the Identify platform is a DocuSign product. It could be like you have bank onboarding by partner X, and they're the ones that are going to do the verification, and we'll sign their agreement once they say, our part is done, right? So
I've also got to believe, depending on the use case, that dictates what customer information you're collecting and harvesting, right?
Yeah, yeah.
KYC, you've got those kind of core 4 or 5 things, but someone might just have a customer that's focused on email or phone exclusively, right?
Yep. So yeah, it'll end up, I don't know if it ends up being as flexible as a marketplace where you can kind of plug in your wares, set your economic thresholds, it magically shows up in DocuSign and off we go. It's probably not that slick anytime soon, but we're already moving into transactions that will definitely have signals from multiple vendors, and we have to aggregate those economics, aggregate that payload, come up with an assessment, and then have an out path if there's something that goes wrong. So I don't think we're years ahead of the problem space, but at our scale, we have to be very thoughtful about it. And that's why we wanted to get your feedback, make sure we're approaching the problem space the right way.
There are some identity and access management solution providers that have built great networks, trust partner networks.
Yep.
You probably want to look at.
Definitely.
Some of the biggest names.
Yep.
And they have a program, they go through to certify the partners and how they show them on the portal and how you customer go there and essentially assemble, right?
Yep.
Your authentication chain or whatever it is, relying on one or more partners.
think we're going to get there soon.
Mm-hmm.
So sorry I came late. I had to step in for someone in another session, but thanks for coming. How we doing on time?
Yeah, we're good. I mean, if there's other thoughts, we'll be around. Stick up.
Yeah. We'll hang in and answer questions. Yeah, thanks for coming. I appreciate it.
Thanks.